Hey, everybody. Hello and welcome in. Yes, indeed. It is time for Three Guys Before the Game. We welcome you in. Episode number 117. The Senator is here, Brad Howe, and our guest, special guest, first time ever on the podcast, because he likes to lead a life that's really, really in the background, really low-key. So after going through his agents, and I said agents, I mean, he got like 15, 18, 19 people that handle all of his stuff. We finally were able to secure the assistant athletic director and head coach for football strength and conditioning at WVU, Mike Joseph. Today's program is being brought to us by the good folks at Wheeling Island Casino and Resort, where Mini Kiss is coming up on Friday, June the 14th. Welcome into the show, Coach Joseph. How are you?
You have me.
I mean, did you ever think the layers that you have to go through to get this guy?
Multiple barriers to communication there to get to him.
I mean, just
one. Just gotta get to my wife.
Why?
I don't have many agents, so
but in all seriousness, you'd like to be in the background.
I think that's the way it should be. As a strength coach, you help develop players, and they go perform.
That's kind of wild.
Simple. If they hear too much about me, then the athletes aren't doing as much they need to. So, and it goes back to our job is to basically support, maximize, hopefully develop them as much as possible physically and mentally, and hopefully on Saturdays, or in terms of strength coaching, in terms of all sports, whether it be a game, field, pool, they all compete at the highest level. But the biggest thing for me for football is making sure they're ready to go.
Okay, so we're going to get into all that. Why is he so humble? We're going to get into all that. He's a West Virginia guy, born and raised in Fairmont, standout athlete at Fairmont Senior, then to Fairmont State, where for 3 years he was the captain of the football team and was an absolute standout player. We'll get into that. Also a heck of a wrestler in high school as well. And at WVU has coached over 25 kids now that have become All-Americans, over 100 kids who were either drafted or signed free agent contracts in the National Football League. And for the most part has been here, but there's been a couple of times where he has gone out and then come back in, and which is hard to do in this business. All right, so let's go all the way back. You ready?
Ready.
Give us I know your dad, big, strong dude. Brothers, sisters, how many?
2 older brothers.
2 older brothers. How much older?
7 years and 5 years.
They beat you up when you were young?
They took care of me until got old enough. Once I got in high school, I took care of my own.
Well,
but it's definitely one of those where growing up, I hung around their friends more often. So for sports, in terms of more the aggressive physicality, I was more around the older guys all growing up. I try to follow, emulate them, and try to hang around them. I'm sure they got very annoyed, but it helped me, I think, throughout sports and throughout my preparations.
Yeah, because 7 and 5 years is a significant difference. I mean, think about that. So when you were like in 2nd grade, your brother's in 9th grade. So it's a big difference. That's a big difference. Do you think that helped you mature as far as playing sports?
I think it definitely helped me mature, because a lot of times, and I see it, I guess my oldest brother, he didn't really start a lot of sports until he was later in elementary or grade school. And my younger brother, or my middle brother, he actually started kind of a few years later. But I think seeing them, I started wrestling when I was probably 4 or 5, started baseball when I was 5. So I was in sports all along. I was manager ball boys every time possible. So, and I'd leave my little league or Pop Warner practices, like I would be a ball boy for high school. So I was around sports growing up since day one.
What was it like when you're a young kid? Obviously, some kids play, and then some kids do the extra stuff, like you just said. What was the light that you looked at and went like, I love this? What was that?
I think because, and probably everybody around me will tell you, I'm ultra competitive. So I can't stand, it would be a board game, or I'm just trying to compete everything.
You get mad when you lose board games?
Yes.
Still do?
I'm more mature, I guess.
Okay, how crazy were you when you were younger and lost board games?
I wouldn't be like the tantrums and throwing stuff, but I'd be very upset for a while.
Where do you think that came from?
I don't know.
Is that your dad? Is that your mom?
No, my family's originally, almost my family's from Pittsburgh area. I'm very, very blue collar, very like my grandfather started in steel mills. My dad did steel mill / construction. My mom was hardworking. Like we always hardworking family. So it's one of the things where I've just been around, just go work, earn your keep, and kind of like every day to day. But the biggest thing I think it's back to just being brought up by good parents and older brothers that knew right from wrong and kind of direct me the right way. So,
was football a clear number one for you, or did you just flip depending on the season when you were younger?
I flipped, and that was one of those. And we were talking earlier before the show. In today's world, you have AAUs, you have year-round baseball, year-round whatever sport, and I think, and that's probably when I talk to all my recruits or all my younger kids at camp, I tell them to do as many sports as possible because you're going to be more multi-talented you are, the better athlete you're going to be. If you look at over the last several drafts in terms of NFL, probably the top, say every year out of 32 guys, probably at least 26, 28 guys played multiple sports, whether through high school or some of them even in college. And it just gives you more competitiveness year round, but also being more well-rounded. But the thing about, I think, is back to, I liked all sports equally. And it's one thing where I think wrestling was one of those things where it came pretty easy to me. And I was competitive with that. Baseball is one of the sports I was pretty good at. But I think football is always one of those things where you have more of a passion towards. But it's one thing where I remember at the end of football season, I'd be next day go right to wrestling. Or and
wrestling ends, you go right to baseball.
A couple times with wrestling, I get made to like the regional of the AAUs, and I could have gone to like not so much the national yet, but it's a tournament right before the nationals. I didn't go because I was like in baseball practice started the next day. So as long as it kept going, and then I get to like All-Star time, it'd be August, football starts. So it's one of the things. It gets back to the next sport. And it's not the point I wasn't competitive. I'd finish and make sure I'd finish whatever the year was, the competitive season was. But basically, I'd just move on to the next sport, and I think it kind of helped my perspective, but also helped me kind of be more competitive throughout because it keeps that interest higher.
Isn't it amazing how many people that do it, take the football side for a second, the people really in it that do it say that, and yet that's not the message that gets out there. You continue to see people, other interests, push these single sport guys, even though that's almost a unanimous thought, is it not?
For most scenarios, and it gets back, you still deal with some very high-level athletes that play, whether it be basketball or baseball or with their particular sport, that their skill set from day one, but there's always, I think, the more well-rounded, like you said, the different competitive or different demands on the body, whether it be agility, speed, being more explosive, or different skill sets you develop through other sports. It just helps. And I think the biggest thing is, unless you're able to compete year-round, playing multiple sports allows you to be more competitive. And allows you, it depends on, it would help me too. And I think the biggest thing, and I would recommend to a lot of, being a wrestler, you had to have, is individual sport.
Yeah.
And you're together, you practice together, but you can't blame everybody. So if I lost, it's all on me. If I got my butt kicked, it's on me. If I won, it's on me. So it's one of the things where, and if I want to get better, I had to outwork everybody. And I think I got carried over to team sport, carried over to help being in a leadership role, because you understand if you have to outwork everybody to get where you want to be.
Do you think wrestling's the most physically demanding sport of all sports?
I would argue it's one of the top, and then there's other sports out there. And again, there's some I've never participated in that I think they're very demanding. If you go into your triathlons, you go into your ultra marathons, and everything has. I think swimming is very taxing, especially when you get more your longer distance. I think every sport has its own demands. Obviously, the more mature you get, the more you prepare for that allows you to. But wrestling is up there as one of the top sports.
Yeah, I've always thought those guys are the hardest working dudes.
And then it goes back to, like, I remember in high school, and we made it to the state semifinals one year, my junior year, and obviously we finished maybe the first week of December, or maybe right before the first week, and we wrestled 10 days later, and I was nowhere in wrestling shape. And I was a guy that never left the field in football, played every snap, defense, offense, special teams, but same time, never left field, and I was nowhere in shape for wrestling. So it's just a different demand. Same thing college, same thing as professional. You just have to develop that demands physically.
You have two boys. So what are you going to do sports-wise?
They both are heavily, Quincy and Brolin, they're 9 and 7. They're both heavily in baseball, they played soccer younger. They did wrestling for a year or two.
Have they retired from wrestling?
Not yet. They just kind of they wanted to do other sports. So right now I'm at the point where I'm not going to ever tell them what they need to do. I'll help guide them when they get into that sport once they choose it. And my wife's the same way. We want them to be successful and be well-rounded, not just sports. We want academics and be more creative artistically and all that. So the biggest thing, we're trying to make sure they're exposed to as much as possible. And at that point, hopefully, as they're older, they'll make right choices in what they want to do.
Did you tell them, hey, we're going to do this, or did you wait until they said, hey, Dad, I'd like to try baseball? How'd you handle that?
It's more that I waited them. And that's one thing where I try to make a conservative measure not to push him anyway because me that's been ultra sports, everything in golf all my life, still does. But I kind of stay away from it to the point where I wanted them to want to be, or kind of maybe because their friends started doing, or who they were hung around, they enjoyed it. So, and that thing worked out well, and they're starting to enjoy their sports now.
It's hard to be a captain on a football team for 1 year, college football team. You did it for 3 years.
Yeah.
So as a sophomore, you were captain.
Yes.
Looking back on it now, why do you think you were honored that early?
I think work ethic. It goes back to, and again, I played at a lower level, Division II, so it goes back maybe as high, like as you go to Division I or you can go to the next level in NFL, it's harder. But I think it goes back to a lot of just daily work, guys watched me in terms of the effort I put in and the discipline, the detail, attention to detail, and I think carried over. And one thing, I'm not somebody who goes out and is outgoing and talk to everybody, but in terms of on a team, and people I know, I pretty much have a great relationship with pretty much everybody I work with, in the locker room, and it kind of helped out because I was the kind of guy in between everybody.
So you were understated even back then.
Yes.
Yeah. I asked you this once before. You played a position coming out of high school that nowadays, I said, well, I mean, look what you did. Look at the success that you had. Could you have been a higher level guy without being humble?
I know.
Could you have been a W? Why? So here you are, star guy, Fairmont right here. Don Nealon's coaching right here coming. What was there? Coming out of high school, what was it?
I had some small offers from.
What did you lack?
Probably size. Because really out of high school, I was probably recruited mostly as a defensive player. So I remember Bob Pruitt back when he's at Tulane, but he's at Florida, and some other coaches coming in. It's like, if you're 6'2", I'll probably not be talking to you right now. And that's kind of in between. If you talk to Coach Nealer or Coach Dunlap, and Coach Dunlap, as I'm a big supporter in terms of me recruiting, but I think it goes back to I was a tweener. I was like in between size of a linebacker and a safety. I was in between, and maybe a step slower than what they want to see. So it goes back to I was just a tweener in terms of size and maybe speed, and that's probably the thing that lacked in terms of like the standout on paper. But it goes back to I think the measurables off the paper would have made up for it.
And yet, the kids that have come. So there's always, to me, there's these classic kids. They're West Virginia kids. They're undersized, blue collar, unbelievable workers, and they come in and play linebacker.
So you're leading up to say if
Ben
it was
Collins,
now, if you bring him in, he would have been one of the guys.
I'm saying
had he been here.
The Ben Collinses of the world. You know what I'm saying? You could have been that guy.
Possibly.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to everybody could say. It goes back to you got to. And I've learned this younger. Obviously, don't regret anything, and that's what I tell our guys: like, don't regret, enjoy it, work as hard as you can. Things are meant to be for a reason. And if I went that route, I might not have made it, and I might not be sitting here right now.
Oh, absolutely.
It would be a different direction. So, yes, you'd always know in the back of your mind, yeah, you could have, and all that. But I think it's back to allowed me to play start pretty much 4 years, allowed me to play a good amount. Still had opportunities like from tryouts. So one of the things where a lot of people don't even have that opportunity. And it got me in the mindset of how the track I am right now, just the mentality, how I work, and how I did things back in college.
Which is what I was going to lead into. When did the bulb come on when your career was coming to an end and saying strength and conditioning is something that I want to not only dip my toe in, I want to get into this field? Did you have a time, or did it just kind of
initially
evolve?
in the beginning of college, I was going like the pre-medical route, and I had biology, psychology as majors, and then I kind of questioned, am I doing this for the true reason of passion to be a doctor or in the medical area, or am I doing it just kind of say I'm doing that? And I think throughout the whole of my career, I had good coaches and just the part of me training guys. And actually, it's kind of funny, during college, I had the key to the weight room. So I'd actually open the weight room for everybody. We run workouts from player on.
You were doing that in college?
In college. And then the year I was kind of finishing up and doing different things, I actually ran Fairmont State's program for that year. Again, not certified, not knowing what the hell I was probably doing at that time. and nothing science-based about that, but just training guys. And I guess at that point, I kind of didn't know really what direction I wanted, didn't really know that you could have an opportunity at that. Because the field at that time was still relatively new, especially at that level. At that level, you had a position coach would kind of watch the weight room, or a position coach would actually run strength training. Just like in high school, you have a head football coach or head wrestling or whoever would kind of run the programs. but basically in that spring, I came down with the staff, and I met with Al Johnson, who was the head strength coach at West Virginia at that time, and we just started talking and potential of that track and the field, and maybe down the road being a graduate assistant or doing a graduate program and be assistant for him, and led to another thing, resume and kind of interviewing back and forth. And that summer I started as a GA for him.
So here you go. The door's open and you come to WVU, and Al Johnson is the strength coach, and he was the strength coach for pretty much the entire run. I mean, for the most part.
Yeah, I think Dave Van Hallinger was the first, and then Al, probably like 83, 84, took over, and he left for a couple years for the Orioles and came back, but he was there till obviously end of Coach Nealon's tenure.
So you're here, you become an assistant, and things are rolling along, and then coaching changes happen. And in your business, when coaching changes happen, I think a lot of times folks always say, hey, we need a new coach. We need a new coach. They never figure out, or they never, not that they don't figure out, they never really understand the domino game that happens as a result of a coaching change, right? And I want to get into that, right? So for you, walk us through then what the trickle effect was for you as your career went on.
Again, at that time, when Coach Nealon retired, obviously Coach Rodriguez came in, and he kept some staff members, but a lot of staff members in terms of coaches, in terms of the football side, were pretty much moved on. Al Johnson at that time went on to Ohio State with Tressel, and he worked with him, I think, 4 or 5 years. But again, at that time, he left, and then with Coach Rodriguez, he kind of brought some new staff in back and forth, and I was finishing up my assistantship, and so one of the things where I didn't know the direction I was going to go. So then Dave Lawson, who was assistant director under Al, took the head Eastern Michigan job and kind of asked me to go with him. And I was getting interviewed, I think, by Virginia Tech and Mike Gentry at Virginia Tech at that time.
Oh, yeah.
And then actually interviewed with Missouri. There's some other places that I at a particular time and chose to go with Dave because I knew him and wanted to help him build a program there. So we went there, and I had obviously number one assistant for football, but then I had about 8 other sports with that. So it's one of those things where as a young strength coach is very humbling, but also it's a great experience because you're thrown in the fire and you have to kind of learn to train athletes the proper way. I'm not saying I did it wrong before, but you learn and kind of experience and develop your coaching style, your ability to lead athletes and train them the right way, and multi-sports, because you're dealing with multiple sports, but also you're dealing with multiple personalities, male, female. So you have different ways to approach every team, different athletes. So you're going to probably from 200 to 300 athletes you're training throughout a day. So it's a little bit taxing. And then at that time, I was there for 2 years, and then that's when I went to Notre Dame.
How'd you get there?
Mickey Marotti, who is a
Thick
Ohio State.
Mick? Is he Thick Mick?
Yes, he was here at West Virginia for a long time. He worked with Al. Again, when he was in Notre Dame, him and Al had a good relationship. I was there. Mickey started under Al, same way.
Yeah, I remember.
And with that being said, they kind of went back and forth. Our staffs kind of interacted, so that's how I had a relationship with Mickey and his staff at Notre Dame. And then he had a couple openings and called me if I'd be interested. So opportunity to go to Notre Dame, a larger school, a lot of tradition. So it was one of these where I'd work on football, then still had about 4 other sports on top of that: baseball, softball, track, and volleyball. So you had other sports with football. So one of those was exciting, kind of demanding. And I was there for 2.5 years before Mickey left with Urban to go to Florida. So I was under originally Coach Willingham, and then Charlie Weiss came in. Then he brought in a new director, Ruben Mendoza, who came from Ole Miss. And so I had opportunity to maybe go to Florida, but then at the same time I stayed at Notre Dame and had opportunity to stay with Ruben. Developed a very good relationship with him, became assistant director, and had a great relationship and great respect for him, just the same as the other directors I worked for. And it's about another 3 years, and I want to say total about 5.5 at Notre Dame, and his opportunity at West Virginia opened up with Bill Stewart. That's how I ended up back here.
I want to talk about Stu calling you, making the call, and getting you in there. But when you look back at the Notre Dame experience, that's different, all right? Because they get different types of kids.
Definitely a national recruiting type basis, and a lot of recruits. A lot of the bigger schools, like you go against Michigan, you go against like Northwestern, you go against Stanford, you go against a lot of your academic schools, but also your larger, say your blue bloods of football. So you get kids from California, Texas, all over the Midwest, all over Southeast, and all the Northeast. So you have a variety of kids, and a lot of kids you get there have a different mentality. how they approach it, how they handle their daily business. So it was a good experience in terms of not just with male football players, but also with all the sports, male baseball and female athletes, but developing a good rapport with them and developing a good base in terms of my career and my ability to coach and ability to kind of develop programs and develop their training regimens.
We'll get into the West Virginia part of this because I think that's an amazing run through the coaches that have been here. At any point up to that point when Stu called you, did you sit back and go, I tell you what, this thing's unstable here. I don't know that this is what I want to do. That concerns me. Or did you just say, this is exactly what I want to do, and the possible turnover is just a side effect? I'm not going to worry about that.
I think early on you start learning about the uncertainty of coaching, and even back when I started, it was a little more consistent, a little more not as volatile.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
Yeah.
But basically now it's obviously evolved into that, just like our profession. Before, I remember back on a lot of strength coaches in college when I was younger and starting in the profession, they're like, well, I'll never jump to NFL because you have no stability there.
Yeah.
We're in the same point right
Same
now.
boat.
It's the same boat. So now I think at Notre Dame, I worked with, again, all the directors I worked under. The good thing, I learned a lot from them. Learned things that I would definitely emulate all the time, things that helped me become who I am, but also there's things I would always adjust. And I think I was so involved with just training athletes and developing and just having that passion, I didn't really think about they'd have to come to an end.
Yeah.
I think that happened later on, maybe in West Virginia. As you get older and more responsibilities, more things are on the line. I think that's maybe something you think about. But I think it goes back to and that's one thing I remember my staff during coaches changes, like, we have no control of what the outcomes, but that one thing you can control is how hard we work and show that we're worthy of what we do. So at that point, I think that I didn't really think about it. Yeah, you're always in the back of your mind. If you're in NCAA or any college coaching, it has a component. And I think probably my wife, because we were just getting married at that particular time, she had a little more concerns probably than I did. But I think it's just I had a passion to come to work every day. So it's one of the things where you didn't really think it'd come to the end.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Our conversation with Mike Joseph continues with this reminder that coming up on Friday night, June 14th, at Wheeling Island Hotel, Casino, and Racetrack, it is Mini Kiss, the hottest, littlest band in the world. All of Kiss's big songs performed by Mini Kiss. Tickets available for $15, available through the Wheeling Island gift shop or through Ticketmaster. Get those tickets quickly because the senator is thinking about buying a group block. He's going to be there for that, and I think that he will sign autographs as well. So check it out. Mini Kiss coming up Friday, June 14th. How well did you know Bill Stewart before he called you?
Bill was obviously a former Fairmont State grad too, so
You guys did the Falcon handshake and all that kind of stuff? Is that what you did, the special
no,
Falcon?
we didn't have the fraternity handshake at that time. No, I didn't really know at the time, but I met Bill back when he was a VMI. He was trying to recruit me, and I didn't really know that well. I knew of him and name and where he was and where he came from. And I guess he said in maybe my junior year, potentially he was interviewing for the Fairmont State job too. And he's like, I could have been your coach for senior year. He's like, I probably would have, your parents would have been pissed because I would have ran your legs off. I was like, it wouldn't happen. So long story short, I got to know Bill when I was a graduate assistant when he first came back under Coach Nealon's staff at the end.
Yeah.
And became good friends with him, and obviously respected how he coached and respected how he was as a man. So I think it developed a lot with us, and then stayed in touch even when I was gone periodically. Again, I'll be lying if I said I talked to him all the time. We periodically stay in touch, and when the opening came about, that's when I kind of reached out to him. And the biggest thing I think in the whole getting back here, I think John Spiker had a lot to do with it too.
And for those that don't know, John Spiker, basically the godfather of athletic training at West Virginia University.
Throughout the country, too.
Throughout the country. He's a National Hall of Famer. Created the program at WVU and is just incredibly respected. And so you reached out to Stu and said, hey, I'm available?
No, it was kind of both. It was like mutual, and because he was bombarded by everybody at that time, this whole staff. And
sure.
Obviously after the whole fistful and kind of that transition point. And I communicated a few times here and there, and then obviously John, I communicated a couple times, and then we talked once we got the interview process started.
You said that you got to know Stu and you had incredible respect for him. What was it that he did that you liked?
I think just a daily approach to work and how you handle stuff. Again, there's always going to be people just like me. There's always going to be smarter than me, that maybe do things different than I do. But I think it's how you approach it and how your work ethic, attention to detail, how you care about people and how you care about the athletes. And that comes back to a lot.
Mm-hmm. Looking back on his tenure, he wins the bowl game, Fiesta, and then he wins 9, 9, and 9. What's your reflections of that?
I think it's one of those where it's frustrating to the point to be on staff, knowing we could have won a couple more games, and I'm sure everybody watching probably had the same thought process. But I think it's back to is tough transition with recruiting / just transitioning personnel. But I think we had some talented teams, and I think it goes back to wishing you would have won 10, 11 games per year, wishing you BCS every year, and win the Big East. I think we shared maybe twice when he was there, but the biggest thing was having the ability to be there.
You think people's perception of him, for the most part, is off the mark?
I think so for the most part. I think he was his football knowledge is very, very high. I think his ability to care for the athletes, that's probably the biggest thing I get from all the former athletes that play under him, or whether it be under as an assistant with Coach Rodriguez or as a head football coach when he had under his tenure. I think the players knew that he cared about, they really knew his everybody want part of their family, whether it be grandmother, mom, aunt, uncle, whoever. He knew their name, knew their everything. And I think that's one of the things where that's a special trait. You get down the street, I think most people could remember somebody they just talked to their name, let alone 2 years, 3 years pass and know everything about an individual. So I think that's the biggest thing. And I think the preparation part, I think just because I think outside world doesn't understand, and then it goes in, now it's even worse, the amount of effort coaches put in to year-round preparing and making sure it's game planning. And it goes back to a lot of the recruiting year-round, because our guys are busy right now. In the spring ball, they're jammed for a month out there as hard as possible getting recruiting. It goes back to because it's a never-ending cycle and trying to bring the best in there so we can compete at the highest level. But I know he's a great person, and I think a lot of people understood that. But I think as a coach, he approached it professionally and worked hard.
Yeah.
The name thing was ridiculous.
Yeah, his memory was unbelievable, just uncanny.
Yeah. Very personable too.
I mean,
I had a real quick side note story on him. One day I was still in the athletic department at the time. Took a group of Coca-Cola representatives down to practice with Stu. We come over, we go through, and there was probably 8 to 10 people. I'll be honest, I didn't know all their names. We go around the circle, they all introduce themselves. I'm like, okay, I think I got most of these fine. Practice happens, we're getting ready to leave. I wave to Stu during practice, like, all right, we're done, we're walking off. He comes jogging over to the point I said, Stu, we're good here. You don't have to. He walks through every one of them, calls them by name at the end of practice. I still didn't know who they were, and they were my people. He knew every one of them. True story.
Yeah. You were talking about the turbulence that coaching changes bring about at this level. And so, like, if you had a tattoo, and I'm sure you don't, but if you did, it would be Survivor. I mean, you're like a cat, man. You're like a cat, right?
Say that.
You're like a cat. So you survive through. You get here. Dana comes in, absolutely just the craziest, weirdest, unconventional way to get a coaching change. You stay.
Mm-hmm.
And Dana leaves, and boom, here comes Neil Brown. You stay again.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't happen. I'm sure when you guys get together, all of you strength and conditioning guys in a room, and y'all have dumbbells, and you just keep doing bench curls while you're talking, because that's what you guys do, because you're all nuts. Like, they must look at you and go like, dude, like, people don't do what you just did.
No, I think it goes back to, a lot of people, even scouts who come in, is like, surprised I stay here this long.
What are you still doing here, right?
And they kind of surprised when I stay how long. But that goes back to, end of the day, how much passion, how much care do you have to your job? And I think it goes back to, not just because I'm from West Virginia, but the hardest part of, like, I think, some coaches have no choice, is leaving the athletes. Because I remember, like, when everything's going down and I'm getting bombarded with texts by every kid on the team.
You're like their dad.
Yeah, because I spent a lot of time with them. And it goes back to, it's tough to say I'm going to walk away. And some, like you said, and I'm not blanking everybody, because there's some people who have no choice. They have to. But I luckily had opportunity to stay, opportunity to have that choice to kind of meet with Coach Brown and make my case of why I think we have one of the best strength programs in the country. And we do a great job in what our potential will be down the road. And I think he believed in the same thing. And the best part, I think, and I had a great relationship with Dana, and I know it's the same type thing where outside looking in, everybody viewed him differently. But I had high respect for him, cared about him. He took care of me on being on his staff and everything. But the biggest thing I think with Coach Brown, a lot of the things I had said in the weight room in terms of pillars and foundation and character and all the things that I say daily in the weight room, he was basically saying, and his basically outlined what he did at Troy and what his coaching foundation is kind of funny. Like, these are things I've been saying for the last 5 to 10 years in terms of what we do in the weight room, what we do in terms of developing character and everything. And it kind of got me kind of excited about that because it's on the same terminology and same vision.
I find it interesting that once Dana did take over, it didn't take him long to just rave about you, right? He would come on and he'd say, I tell you what, Mike Joseph, those guys down there did a really good job, and they're great. They do a great job. And then shortly thereafter, and I'm jumping really ahead quick here, Neil Brown says, like, same deal. So you guys got something going on there, and so that's not just internal. It's also like people nationally respect you guys, your staff, and they think that you guys are like way ahead of the curve on the stuff that you're doing. What was the percentage that you thought you were gone after Neil Brown got hired? I mean, I'm talking about within the hours after it happens. All right, Dana's gone. Did you think 50-50 you were out? Did you think 40-60, 60-40, I'm probably out of here?
That's probably high. I don't
70,
have a percentage.
and you were just moving into a new house. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, I was building a house.
You were building a house?
Took longer than
Of course you were. Of course that's the way it works.
My wife and I, we wait for 10 years or whatever. Like, decided I would go and do it. And then, I don't want to get the building process, but the building process went a lot longer than it should have. And so we get to the point where we're not even in yet, and this is all going down. We didn't know what to do. So
Now you sell it as a spec house.
yeah,
Did
we
you?
were basically, we didn't.
You get in the real estate business at that point.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
Honestly, at that time, I didn't know. And one of the things
75% you thought you were gone?
And
80, too high?
I have a great relationship with Dana, so I'm assuming,
I know.
So it's one thing where you have options you're thinking about, but it's one of the things where I don't know. And I've never, with coaching with Coach Brown, a lot of his coaches, I don't have that. I've never been in his circle or even coaching his tree or people like that. So it's one thing I don't know. And it's one thing where until I met him, I didn't know either.
Okay, what was the first meeting like?
As the same day that you guys, I think you got off the plane, got here with Shane and administration.
Was it down in your place or was it up in his
no,
office?
because he came in just to tour of the facility, and at that time he went to, obviously met with the team and kind of introduced himself and his vision and that. And then we sat down that night a little bit for a while, several hours, and just kind of talked about what I've done in the past, what the program's been like, what different things and kind of good and bad, and what I saw. And you know, we did that for probably a couple of days. And then that hopefully made a difference in the point of being on the same page and him giving me opportunity. And it's one thing where I still have to every day show up and make sure I'm doing the right job. Because again, that's one thing I think why our staff's been successful is because I think overall outwork guys, and we kind of push the envelope in terms of guys, the highest level of performance, and demanding a lot of guys out in terms of discipline and trying to be the cutting edge in terms of, and I know we'll talk about it a little bit later, but the latest things in terms of technology and how we train and what we do and try to be comparable. And I think there's a big difference because West Virginia, you have to develop guys. And I think to a point, he has to understand that to get a lot of our players, you have to develop them. You have to kind of get them bought in. And I think to probably his view, like, it made it easier transition and keep somebody in the strength conditioning program, kind of keep that consistency to allow him to kind of implement how he wanted to.
Yeah. Here's what I got from those guys. So they come in and they basically do a survey of the whole thing, and they're touching as many bases as they can. They're talking to kids. They're talking to anybody. They're talking to athletic department staff. They're talking to other coaches that have played against West Virginia. And what they came out of it was this. They came out with everything that we want to do, the way we want to do it, it's already going downstairs. All the discipline that we want, those guys got it all. It's upstairs. We got other issues. It's downstairs. They're doing exactly what we want. So that's what I think. They looked at it and went like, we're good. That's exactly what we need. But still, at the same time, it's easy for the other coach to come in and go, I'm bringing my own strength guy, or I'm bringing my own guys, right? That's the easy thing to do. You've seen it in your business.
And probably, honestly, if going back to times with Dana, if he had his strength coach at that time, I might not have been here because at that point he had no affiliation with West Virginia or so it goes back to has a little bit maybe luck. You're talking about how like persevere has luck at that time and just maybe nobody else to fill in. And then now, again, it goes back to I think Coach Brown had a guy, my assistant director, Raphael Horton, I worked with him at Troy's, but I think he goes back knowing that my current staff plus adding Raphael to the mix, it helps with having hopefully a better strength conditioning program in general.
So get into the weeds here a little bit. 12 years, a long time since you came back with Stu or Stu's first year. What's the biggest change either in your philosophy or program-wise that has happened since you came back day one to where you sit today?
I think, number one, I grew as a coach. Again, I'm a different coach now than 12 years ago in terms of just experience, knowledge, in terms of how I approach it, how my interaction with the kids. I think going back to when I first got here, I was probably more in your face, get after kids. And I'm not saying I still get after kids a lot. Our workouts are very, very intense because we have kids who transfer from everywhere in that struggle through our workouts. But I think it goes back to now knowing as you get older, like the biggest thing is not what the program does, or anybody across the board that doesn't work in weight room can make a good program. They can write sets, reps, percentages. They can look at a textbook and look at that. But the nuances of a kid and understanding his background, his goods, bads, his strengths, weaknesses, but also some kids don't trust. So the number one thing I think goes back to developing that trust as a younger athlete. It helps them kind of buy in faster. And I think what's helped me a lot with the program in general, and then I'm not saying it's a lot of our guys that left the program. A lot of our guys are in the NFL that come back and work out yearly. Those are the guys that help me sell the program, because I can sit here and I can be named every national whatever else and be supposedly the best of this, but the kid's still going to look at NFL guys or the guys that are on internet. They're going to look at those guys to justify everything. And our guys that come back and guys that have left the program, those are the best guys for the program right now. Even Najee Good came in today. He's in town for just a day. When we stopped in, just started talking to a lot of the athletes. Those are the guys that kind of, I think, sell the program, sell what we do, but also get the guys to buy in faster than not.
You know, you talk about an advantage if you're a head coach and you're looking, think of the advantage right there, because sometimes that's what you lose. When head coaches transfer out, some of those guys that played for that head coach maybe don't feel the same about coming back, even if they're welcome back. It's just a different vibe. Having you consistent through all those coaches probably is a huge advantage.
Yeah,
you and your staff, too.
It goes back to, I think back in the days of Coach Nealon, Washington players always hopefully been felt welcome, especially alumni. But I think it goes back to Coach Brown's done a very good job in terms of made a very big initiative in getting guys back on campus and reaching out to a lot of the current players, former players in the NFL, whoever has been part of the program since day one. I think that's the biggest thing. I think it's been a big help for our program in general across the fan base.
What's the biggest challenge that young kids coming in, first-year players coming into the program, have to make? Is it more, so you're in the physical business, right? You're in the strength business. Is it more mental than physical once they put their feet in?
A lot of mental.
That's what it is, isn't it?
And that goes back to, I can tell every kid I talk to recruit-wise, and day one, we'll meet June, whatever that Sunday is, June 2nd or 3rd. All that new group of guys coming in. And I'll tell every one of you can play 3 games right now, or maybe 4 games. None of you can play a full season, just because your body can't handle. Just like most of the guys that leave this program last year, like their NFL guys just got drafted or signed, they can't play a full 16-game, 18, 20-game season in the NFL. Your body can't handle it because you can't understand the demands. So especially younger guys, number one, they have to deal with all the social, deal with all the coming in college, being away from home, or whoever their very close support was at home. And now they're getting thrown everything at them in terms of not just what I'm doing in training. Training is hard and very demanding, but now they got academics. Now they got the football schedule that's above and beyond everything they've ever done. Then they have to deal with everything, eating, in terms of sleeping, in terms of studying, all these on their own. The biggest thing is, I think, mental, being able to handle their daily schedule and being detailed and be disciplined. Because a lot of athletes, I think, come in and kind of get overwhelmed, or just guys that maybe all through their career, like you're talking about talented athletes, they're very, very gifted to go throughout their whole career. In high school, they've never been challenged. Never had to work that hard because it's been easy to them. Now you come at the highest level. Now we have guys that are just as talented. Maybe now you're a freshman. Now you can deal with a guy like a Gary James, weighs 215, still runs a 4.3. That's stronger, faster, and you take a guy who's been in the program or a guy who's gone maturity. It's a different composition factor you have to kind of think about into how you make it happen. But the biggest thing I think with younger guys, the ones that understand and kind of can be disciplined and have confidence daily at a younger age are the ones that can participate and have more success. Some guys struggle with it for a year, 2 years, and maybe 3 for some that are late bloomers. They just struggle with maturity and buying in and the trust. And as I said earlier, I think the biggest thing is in my area and any coach is developing that trust with the athlete and trust with the program and getting them to do things that maybe they're uncomfortable with. Because a lot of times if they don't trust you, they're not going to go past that point. They're not going to do things extra. But if they trust you, know you have their best interest at heart, I think that you have the most success with them.
If they don't trust you, then they just shut it down?
I think they have a point of where they're going to limit themselves or they're not going to do as much.
Can you tell, Mike, when a kid, like when this group comes into you that first Sunday of June and you sit them down and here's all your first years in front of you, how long does it take you before you know, yes, no, yes?
I think you get like anything else, just like in general world and business world, you're going to have your first impression of everybody. And how you handle yourself, how you eye contact, how you respond, how you listen, has a lot to do with it. So I'm going to have initial, and these guys I've dealt with the recruiting for a couple of years. These guys I've dealt with feedback. I've sent you manuals, and they've been doing stuff via email. So it's not like the first time I ever met with them. So, but you get to know them right when you tell them these are the things you need to do today. These things you need to do to show up tomorrow morning, or these are things you need to follow in terms of your responsibilities. Then I think it starts that first 2 weeks, and even probably every coach will have the same thing. How's he doing in the weight room? I won't know until probably at least till July. Have about 3 to 4 weeks of training, and I can tell how disciplined he is. I can tell how much extra work he does. I can tell how he takes care of his body. I can tell his effort. And I'm not saying everybody's not going to be equal because some guys come in just completely out of shape. Some guys come in
today.
Yes, still today. We have current guys that come in and out of shape. If I'd let them go home for 3 or 4 weeks, they're not going to do anything.
Still.
It's amazing.
Well, that just tells you what you got.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to, and then now the small percentage compared to old days when they used to be home all summer.
Yeah.
But those are small guys. When you talk about coach talks about buy-in, talks about you want to be the best, and that's why I always tell guys you're not going to be the best if you're not outworking anybody. If you're not doing things on your own, not doing extra. Because if you're comparing yourself only on this in our locker room, you have no chance. Because how many guys make the NFL per year? Maybe less than 1% out of the college population. So again, if you're not the 1%, the one guy on our team that outworks everybody, you're not that guy. Now, say if you make it to be the best guy, hardest worker on the team, then now who are you comparing yourself to? Now you got to go everybody in the country, everybody in the conference, everybody across that plays your position. And do you have that motivation? I think younger guys, I won't know that for a while because obviously their time will tell. Because some guys just are so wide-eyed and scared when they first get here, and kind of it takes them a while to get kind of comfortable. And some guys may put on that front when they first get here, how they are, and they kind of change over time when they kind of get things kind of a little bit harder when a little more adversity hits. And I think if they can handle it, and kind of the biggest thing, if they can stay consistent, and that's our job as coaches, not just strength and conditioning coaches, but football coaches and support staff, to help guys mature.
Yeah.
And it goes back to Coach Nealon, and one of the things I always tell young guys, the best quote is like, as a freshman, we have a lot of patience. Sophomores, very little patience. Juniors, seniors, none. Because by that time, you know exactly what to do. By the time you're mature, you understand it. So if young guys come in, we're going to have a lot of patience for it. Now, do you want you still screwing up and do bad things? No. But we're going to understand that you're going to experience things. You're going to have problems in terms of some bad things happen to you. How you overcome it will help you get there.
Let's talk technology for a second. So that's obviously a lot different than when you got into the business. What's the single best tool from the technology world that you guys use on a daily basis that's helped you be better and make those kids better?
I think it goes back to multiple. I can't say one. I think in terms of football field, I'd say our GPS and catapult, because that's something that's tangible, that's numbers that I can kind of meet with. In the past with Coach Orson, now with Coach Brown. Coach Brown's very, very in tune with it in terms of, because other places he's been, they've used it. And I think he can see guys moving fast. You can see their player loads, which is basically the number of all that summarizes their agility, their change of direction, their intensities, their efforts, or their distance, all one number. And it kind of allows us to see how practices are going. Now, the one thing we have to be careful with technology is one thing where we kind of I have to check myself most of the time and staff, but also with Coach Brown also is like, this should reinforce practice, not change practice. And all it does is like reinforce we're practicing in a good tempo. We're taking breaks we need to, or we're going hard enough, or we're not going hard enough. So we're kind of hopefully adjusting that way. I'd say in terms of the weight room and how the best technology, I think, is back to our sleep bands that we are using, and Omega Wave. I'll explain both of them. Sleep bands are basically just almost like Fitbits. They're a watch, a wrist unit you can wear that measures your HRV, heart rate variability, and also then now it gets into your sleep, how your quality of sleep. So it could be, I may have slept 8 hours, but how much deep sleep, deep wave, REM sleep do I get? Now, as a good athlete, you want as much sleep as possible. This is the first thing I tell athletes as a recruit. You're about between 18 and 24 years old. You're about to enter an opportunity where you have the most natural hormones in your body producing testosterone, HGH. All you have to do is train hard, eat, and sleep. Simple. And that's the hardest thing
but
for guys.
Sleeping in college is hard, right? I mean, that's a different lifestyle now.
General population. How many people with
in
phones?
college, general?
I'm just saying general.
Oh, just regular, yeah.
In college is bad.
Yeah.
But I'm saying general population in general. How many people are sleep deprived?
But I'm at my house with my wife. We can get ourselves in bed at a decent time. I'm in a dorm or an apartment complex, and guys are up late. That's a whole nother challenge.
One thing, and that goes back to freshmen struggle with this, and it goes back to our maturity level too, because younger guys don't want any part of this. Older guys that really care about the body, they'll start buying in. And I think it goes back to, with that being said, all it is trying to change behavior. And I always tell the same thing I tell parents, when we're going over the recruiting, I'm not trying to be big brother. We're not trying to watch what time you go to sleep. We're making sure you're getting quality sleep. So hopefully if I'm getting 8-9 hours of sleep and it's quality, and I'm not getting disturbed 50 times a night of noises, roommates, whoever, and I'm sleeping quality wise, hopefully my injury rate goes down, my performance goes up, my academics go up, my minimizing errors on the field, critical errors go down. So I think it's back to, that's a hand in hand with our training. Now, if you train hard, you prepare in terms of skill work, you're tactical in terms of football, and you take care of academics, and you're living right, hopefully your success will be a lot higher. Omega Wave is basically just another step higher that it's monitoring your central nervous system. Now, it kind of see if you're how your central nervous system is in balance. So if a guy is kind of not sleeping well, not training well, it might show he's in red, or he might be at a point of not eating, or he might be in a point of stress, where he's about to become sick, or he's about illness set upon him. So we'll try to adjust that daily to see how he's recovering. Now, if we have a whole team in red, then we might have to worry about how we're training, how we're practicing. If we have one or two guys in red, everybody else in green, or in yellow, which is kind of in between, then more than likely we have to look at those two individuals and their lifestyle. And
you're doing this on a daily basis for everybody over there, all the football guys?
We have about 60 guys on Omega Wave now. We have 75 on fatigue science.
And you're watching this every day?
Every day. And then GPS, we have about 56 guys. So that's a very important staff.
Changed a little bit since you were running around Fairmont.
Yeah, I'd be a lot better an athlete at that time.
I got a question here for you. So you've been here you've been through hundreds of athletes. You're into the thousands of athletes now. All right. Each year you give away the you give spring ball, you give away the Iron Mountaineer, what is it?
Iron Mountaineer.
Iron Mountaineer, right? Give me your 3 greatest workers all time.
Hopefully not too many people listening.
Don't worry about it. 3 greatest weight room guys.
Weight room guys. I might be political on this one. I don't know.
Don't be political. I mean, guys that when they came in to work out and you guys were sitting in your offices.
I expect that out of everybody, though.
I know that, but I mean, who are the greatest of the greats? There's always the great. You're a competitive guy. You always want to be number one. Who's the number 1, 2, and 3? All-time great workout guys.
All-time great.
Yep. Who's on your Hall of Fame team? Who's on the wall?
I'd probably put you have to go by, if you go by Iron Mountaineers, the multiple winners, more than 1 year, and these guys I dealt with, not obviously some prior to me.
This is fair.
I'd say I go back to early on, Keith Tandy.
Yeah.
Pro.
Will Clark.
How about that?
Pro.
I'd probably go to Tyler Orlowski as a lineman. Mark Lewinsky's up there, too, in terms of.
How about him?
I saw the other day pushing
cars. Yeah. Just nothing new for him.
Moving on. I'm just going to give you a couple of through the years. I'd argue that DeKeel Short's one of my harder guys to come through the program. Carl Joseph, since day one, I'd put him up there.
He was, yeah.
Just how he worked and effort, intensity. One of the guys that had a good career, but honestly he's been working harder last 5 years. He comes in every offseason. I'll put Quentin. Spain's been better, but I'd put Barkley up there, Donnie Barkley.
Donnie Barkley.
Had a good career for me. Started 4 years.
Yeah.
I came through a lot of injuries over that. Overcome a lot of injuries. More recently, in terms of the highest workers, I'd put up David Long and David Sills up against anybody. Those probably, of my career, those are probably the hardest workers.
All right, take it from a different standpoint. Somebody that maybe early when they got here, you went, I don't know, they got a long way to go. And by the end, you went, all right, that's a great example. So maybe you didn't achieve the goal, the status of those other guys, but came the furthest from when you first saw them.
I take Eli Wellman as one of those guys.
In-state kid.
Now you go back to walk-on, Justin Arndt.
Justin Arndt.
Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
He's
That's a
kid probably
great
was
one.
almost quitting, but decided to buy in.
Became a captain.
Yeah, captain. I'd put even Gary Jennings up because he's talented coming in. He worked hard, but he bought in. I guess I'm forgetting all my old guys.
Gary said when he came here, he thought he had to be really big. He said when he came here, he was like, I forget how much he said he weighed. He said, I went out there and went like, what am I doing here? I'm too big.
Well, I remember it was first he came to a camp. He already committed, and he came to one of the summer camps, or 717, one of the two. Lonnie Galley's like, you need to check his body fat. He weighed 200 or 203. I'm like, it looks pretty lean to me. And I remember we looked at it or whatever. He's probably about maybe 7% body fat, 6%. So he's lean. I was like, he's fine. And that's one thing where Gary, he's one of my guys that obviously genetically gifted. So we're talking about guys that are take Tavons, you take Bruce Irvins. We're talking about Kevin Whites, and all the guys are genetically gifted kids. Yeah, I'm not taking credit for them, their genetics. That's give you credit to the sperm, the egg, and the parents on that one. But we helped them get there. Now take Gary. He's a guy that never bought. He was always afraid to gain too much weight because he's afraid to get slower. And I was like, as long as you're training hard, you're lean, and you're lean muscle mass, and everything, we're going in the right direction, and you're getting stronger. You're going to get faster. And for a couple of years, he was up and down. He's like, I don't want to gain weight. I don't want to do this. And I think last offseason, he had a great offseason, which he had every year. He had a good offseason. But we did talk about GPS. We did GPS flying 10s, 2030s, which is a true max speed. He had, I think, 22.7, which is
22.7 miles an hour.
Yeah, which is fastest guy on the team. And we did our force plate, which is a force deck, kind of measures your power. Most explosive guy on the team. And he weighed 216, 215 at that time. Then he goes, and obviously on the field, he had success throughout the year. We watched. Then he goes to the Senior Bowl, had the fastest GPS time at the Senior Bowl. Mm-hmm. So it just reinforces for him, if it's done properly and done the right way, you're successful. And those guys, he's one of the guys, David Sills, Will, David Long, all those guys pay attention to their body and how they recover and all the things we have available. And I think it helped them out.
I'm hoping that it helps the rest of the kids out that look at those guys and go they treat their body like what it is. It's their moneymaker, right? It's their shrine. And more kids nowadays need to look at it and go, what do those guys do to get to that level? I mean, you mentioned Keith Tandy. Keith Tandy was a quarterback in high school, right? And no one ever thought that he would be a veteran, multi-year NFL guy, right? And he made himself a player.
Yeah, without doubt. I think it goes back to how hard he worked. He's one of the smarter guys ever come to this program. People don't realize how intelligent he was. I think he's one of the highest guys on the Winter League. So that's intelligence helped.
How about that?
But I think and even when he comes back and how he works in off season, and that's why there's a lot of our guys that make the NFL stay there for a while because they understand how to work, they understand how to take care of their body. So, and that's why I always tell guys, I'm not going to force you to do everything. There's certain things I'm going to force you to do, but there's a lot of things I'm not going to demand it if you're not ready for it. Because me sitting there watching you in a cryotherapy, watching you doing this and this, and if you don't buy in, and then as soon as you leave the facility, you don't take care of your body, it's useless. Now, the moment you want to show maturity and you really want to be the best, you want to be hopefully have the best potential genetically, physically, and performance-wise, then we'll work towards that. And that goes back to what we said earlier. It's all about the maturity of them at that particular time and how bad they want it.
Where's flexibility in this mix? Because it's not just getting in the squat rack and banging out 600. Because you've always been a big flexibility guy.
Well, flexibility is at every part you do. We're always doing warm-up, MIP, muscle activation, injury prevention, preparing for movement. So when they come in, they're doing hurdles or do bands, they're doing mobility. We do yoga 3 times a week for offer it. And we're talking about 50, 60% of the guys do it, and there's times that they don't. Now, there's guys that kind of fall off, pay attention to doing extra recovery, extra stretching, extra mobility. Then those are the guys that have tendonitis or guys have issues that may be limitations. And it goes back to over the last couple of years, our soft tissue issues have been very minimal. We've had, I think, 1 in the season over the last 2 years, and that means like a muscle strain, a quad tear, or a hamstring pull, all that.
That's the yoga and the stretching and the bands.
It's how they take care of the body. And now if you're doing lifting properly, if you're doing range of motion, if you warm up properly, you're getting more flexibility. But that takes the discipline every day. But, that's one thing where you never leave a weight room. They never come into the training facility without doing mobility or doing something that's going to help their movement functionally in terms of their position and maybe the hips, their low back, their hamstring, their quads, their lower ankle. It's always working for hopefully be a better athlete.
Now, see, that's for the 20-year-olds. You're getting older, Caridi, so you need to do more of this flexibility stuff as you age, right? You should mix maybe less in the cardio and more flexibility as you get old.
Too.
I did a 35-minute stretch thing Saturday morning, 5:30 in the morning. Felt unbelievable. 35 minutes with our boy. Our boy Sean Veig on YouTube. We love him. I don't know if you ever heard of this dude.
I know he is.
He's good. He makes you laugh, but he's good. He's really, really good. 35 minutes.
So in all truthfulness, for the people listening to this, because we probably don't have a ton of world-class athletes listening, flexibility has to become more important as you get older.
Flexibility in core is probably the most important for anybody in normal life population. A lot of people forget about core because that's why back issues arise. That's why posture issues and just in terms of sometimes stamina. Because your body's having to support. And I think the core mobility is the number one factor. If I take athletes, if they can't do basic core movements or they can't do basic movements flexibility-wise, they're going to continue to do that body weight-wise until they can get there before I add weight.
Okay, so here we go. Ready?
So I'm in some trouble. I need to drop the curls. Okay. I'm probably too heavy on my curls.
Yeah,
I gotta get
you are.
Stretching. Yeah.
You are. You're just killing yourself on curls. So, okay, I've asked you this before. So here we go. For the general person out there, 3 best exercises they should do.
Diet.
See, that's so good. That's so good.
Honestly, and I struggle with it.
That's a great answer.
I would say,
yeah, look at you. I mean, you're just absolutely.
But diet is the number one thing. Honestly, that would make a biggest difference for everybody's diet. I think doing something active, it doesn't have to be like the cardio of being a treadmill and a bike. I think just being active and doing like just basic body weight, stretching, I guess the calisthenic type exercise, push-ups and like core. And
you
all
told
that.
me once push-ups and squats.
Body weight stuff. That's why I tell me if I have a younger athlete, and that's the problem. I think our field keeps expanding too much. I think some athletes, there's certain kids. I think I talked to one of my assistants that we had somebody starting doing kettlebells and stuff with a 3 or 4 year old. I'm not exaggerating. That's the world we live in. And you talk about parents with year round.
Yeah,
you have to be intelligent and be somewhat sensible.
Like, how do you do kettlebells with a 3? Like in cans of food? Like
it might be like
cans of green beans?
It might be like a 1 pound, but it's still the idea. Like
it's crazy.
That's
a little niche. You don't need the kettlebell at that point.
Well, you don't need to do any like weighted stuff until a certain point.
It's all body weight.
It's all maturity. Like there's some 12-year-olds that probably look like 16-year-olds that probably could handle it. But there's some 16-year-olds that still look like 12-year-olds.
Yeah, their joints can't
You have to go by their maturity as their body, not just by their age.
How big has, I'm going to let you go here, how big has diet taken over your business? NCAA changed rules. You guys have unbelievable, really nice.
The amount of food we can offer these guys, it's unreal. Now, I'm very appreciative because I remember the days when you couldn't get guys to eat, and you kind of like, I give them as a shake.
But that had to make you crazy because that affects what you're trying to get them to do if they're starving when they come in.
Weight, and we have guys that used to show up, and we'd be, say, training at a group of 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, middle of the afternoon, hot, and they haven't eaten anything all day.
And they go down.
Or they snack on a little, like I wouldn't even give a 3-year-old in terms of time, their amount of calorie diet. And you're expecting them to compete at the highest level. It's not going to happen. But through the deregulation of nutrition and adding meals and adding more to the training table, you have to, and that goes back to anything these student athletes have, they have every resource possible. In terms of academics, in terms of athletic training, in terms of strength and conditioning, the coaches, in terms of technology, resources, in terms of iPads, in terms of watch game film, watch all their installs. So they have every resource possible. You have to make an effort to not eat, to not be successful. Now, there's some athletes that are, whether it be some weight loss guys that still choose to eat all the fried food and all the things they shouldn't, or there's some athletes that are need to gain weight, just they're kind of like still. I grew up on McDonald's. I grew up on this anything they ate because it's anything they had available. So that's anything they want to eat. So over time they transition as myself, my staff, nutritionist, the position coach, all trying to be on the same page and guide them. But the amount of food and amount of snacks and recovery sources they have is pretty phenomenal. It's definitely made a big difference.
Appreciate your time, man.
Appreciate you having me.
It's always good. Always good. He is Mike Joseph, the head coach for football strength and conditioning, assistant athletic director at WVU. He's the you can't get rid of him. I mean, he just kind of keeps coming back and keeps coming back, and he's
as long as you need me to.
And he's nationally respected and regarded for the work that they've done. And as I think the biggest point you said, Mike, this is a developmental program. West Virginia is not getting the kids at the quote unquote the highest level, 5 stars, but you make them and you just continue to, as I said, over 100 kids that have signed free agent or gone on to the NFL, 25 All-Americans. You develop players, and classic that you do it in this state because this is kind of the blue collar state where people come to work, and you're doing it in the weight room as well. Cue the music, cue the music, cue the music. Here it is. We're out. Episode number 117 of Three Guys Before the Game is officially into the book. Special thanks to Mike Joseph, and for the Senator, our special thanks to our sponsor, Wheeling Island, where Mini Kiss is coming to the resort on Friday, June the 14th. Check out the biggest, littlest band in the world. Tickets available at Ticketmaster. Talk to you soon. Three Guys Before the Game. We're out. See ya.